I'm Terry, and this is Tea with Terry, where we talk about thoughts, emotions, and actions. Today, we're going to talk about the emotion of empathy. And this came about because I recently recorded a podcast with Kim Addis, and we talk about empathy and some of the pitfalls, really, of empathy. So today, I just wanted to share some new perspectives for you, perhaps, around what it means to be empathetic, what it means to walk in someone else's shoes. And the first thing I want to do is I want to reframe that idea that empathy is walking in someone else's shoes. So I'm going to call on the master of emotions, my mentor, Brene Brown, and I want to talk about her book, Atlas of the Heart, where she talks about empathy, because we often get empathy and compassion confused. And frankly, I used to judge myself for not being empathetic enough. So here's one of the things that Brene Brown has to say about empathy. She says, empathy is a tool of compassion. We can respond empathetically only if we are willing to be present in someone else's pain. If we're not willing to do that, it's not real empathy. And then what is very powerful, I believe, in this explanation that she shares is she says that effective empathy is its own emotional attunement to someone else's experience. So it looks different than walking in someone else's shoes because we're not trying to basically get down into the place where our friend, colleague, family member, partner is. We're actually doing something a little different. And Brene Brown also says, and I think this is really important, we need to dispel the myth that empathy is walking in someone else's shoes. Rather than walking in your shoes, I need to learn how to listen to the story you tell me about what it's like in your shoes and believe you even when it doesn't match my experiences. And what I think is really key here is the listen and the belief. So there is a thought leader out there called Dr. Becky Kennedy. And Dr. Becky Kennedy has a body of work to help parents with dealing with their children and to kind of explore how we teach our children emotional resilience, how we navigate parenting with being more aware, and we use more of these tools of compassion and empathy. One of my favorite things that Dr. Kennedy says is, I believe you. I believe you. And what I love about that simple phrase is this powerful place where we suspend our own judgment. We don't have to have the same experiences that someone else is having in order to believe that that's how it feels for them. If you've ever caught yourself in that dynamic of, well, no, that's not true. I don't think that about you. You're not really like that. We can dive into these types of phrases and these places where someone is sharing something hard by trying to validate our own thoughts. And what we really need to do to be empathetic is to not get right where they are, but to validate their pain. I believe you, even when we don't experience the same way. So if your child says to you or your partner says, oh, I feel so gross and ugly today, you might want to say, well, that's not true. You're beautiful. Beauty comes from the inside out. Is that the most empathetic and helpful and compassionate response? I want to invite you to try something a little different with this understanding of believing the person and not having to have had that own experience. So imagine instead, oh, I hear what you're saying, and that sounds like a really tough place. What's happening today that has you feeling that way? Like validate, I believe you. It's okay that you have that thought. It's very vulnerable. for many people to share these thoughts. And when we respond from a place of what we think might be compassionate response or empathy, it can get all tangled up if we're not really listening, and then also looking at the ability to understand or open some understanding without it having to be our own personal experience. So I hope this helps you when you think about, how do I respond empathetically? What is the confusion around, walking in someone else's shoes? And I just think it's such a beautiful place to explore more listening, more compassion, more empathy. And when I look at empathy in this lens, I don't feel so judgmental about the way that I show up. And it's a growth place. We can all learn to do better.